Easter season, I think, is the hardest for every Christian out there. We want people to know Jesus because when you know Jesus, you know peace. So what holds America together? That's a question in recent years that has kind of taken on a renewed urgency, right? Increasingly, Americans just don't like each other. They don't want to associate with one another, and they don't want to live next door to each other anymore. More and more, they don't want to share the same country anymore. Love each other just as I have loved you. Whether you'll be celebrating this Easter by going to church or getting together with family or friends, my prayer is that we are all reminded just how loved we are. And when you don't have that reminder, that's when we start to see this mass division. What holds America together? When you abandon faith and good, then you have to decide, you know what? I'm better off being separate from those who are in tune with peace. That's what goes through somebody's head who abandons faith and who abandons morality. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Be a part of the show. It's an Easter special show. We're going to be hitting a few things in the news. Durham report. We've also got to get to this Whitmer case. I really want to hit on that because I feel like the mainstream news media, this isn't a shock, the lamestream news media didn't cover this Whitmer case nearly as much as they should have. But we're walking free today because of the crucifixion. Call in 309-451-9299. You can also text that number 309-451-9299. When you don't have Jesus, you don't have peace. No Jesus, no peace. We get a supernatural sense of peace when you're a follower of Christ. I've noticed that. Now, let me know what you've encountered. But when you start to follow Christ and when you start to have faith in something bigger than yourself, then you almost develop this really supernatural sense of peace. We should always strive through that. Throughout the Easter season, it's easy to get caught up in all of these wonderful activities the holiday brings, like decorating eggs and planning a menu for a delicious Easter dinner. You might be getting Easter baskets together for the kiddos tonight. While you're tackling, the Easter Bunny will be doing that, while you're tackling your long list of spring to-dos, it's important to quietly reflect on what Easter is really all about. Sitting down for a few minutes each day with these Bible verses might just help you. I know they help me. These meaningful Bible verses about Easter will remind you and your family why Easter is such an important holiday. Try incorporating these Easter Bible verses in your Easter prayers tonight. Okay, so John chapter 11, verses 25 through 26 says this. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Another one that gets me through the Easter season. It's a hard Easter season because a lot of us have had some rebellion and a lot of us have been really honestly lost and confused. So 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 3, praise be to God and our Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 21. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man. So this societal collapse, it's coming, and you need to prepare. Good Friday was yesterday, and I really have a hard time wrapping around my head around why we call Good Friday, because on that day, over 2,000 years ago, our Lord and Savior was beaten, mocked, betrayed, and ultimately crucified. And yet, we call it a good day. The reason we call it good is because 3 days later, Jesus defeated death, hell, and sin. The situation that seemed absolutely awful, God somehow managed to turn it into good. And we'll get to celebrate that good tomorrow. That's the kind of God we serve. If today can be turned if today it can be turned around, then your situation can always be turned around. If God can turn Good Friday around, then your situation, whatever you're dealing with, it can be turned around for good as well. Jesus paid in full. And there's a plethora of reasons why he did it. For our rebellion is one. I know the obvious one, why did Jesus die on the cross? For our sin, right? But Jesus died for our rebellion as well. Our rebellion, our transgressions. He also took all of it. And not just some. He took all of our transgressions, all of our rebellion, all of our sin. Today, I came across somebody and I asked them, I was just kind of making some small talk. It was a nice day and I was, out on a run. And I looked at this woman and I said, hey, what are you doing for Easter? And she looks at me and she, I could see the disappointment in her face in me asking that question because she might have gotten it before and she didn't know how to respond. But then she says this, we aren't really religious and my kids are grown, so nothing really, just going to work, I guess. And instead of turning away, I went up to her and I said, well, what do you mean by you aren't religious? What do you mean by that? Why aren't you religious? And she said that, well, a lot of my friends, they're homosexuals and I just think that the church isn't so accepting of somebody like me. And I think they're kind of hypocritical. That's a lot of what I've heard when I ask somebody, hey, why are you an atheist? Godless people constantly think. Notice that language. I think the church is hypocritical. I think that they're against gay people. I think that they're not as accepting as they should be. Notice the semantics there. Being unsure through life has got to be tough. It's got to be tough. And we see people seek the way of the world instead of seeking Christ because they honestly believe peace resides in something out there, whether it be a sin or whether it be, the TikTok or social media or Twitter. There's all kinds of things that people look for peace in that is not of God or not in Christ. I just want to play this quick clip and then we'll get into some Durham report next.
When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new. Now life begins with you.
So that's North Point. That's a little bit of Christian rock. I do listen to quite a bit of Christian rock. You can always call in, be a part of the show, 309-451-9299. I think we've got a caller here. Caller, are you on the line?
Yes, Leon.
Oh, hey, Leon, how are you?
Well, hi, Kat. I'm listening. I really like it.
Happy Easter. I figured I'd do a little bit of an Easter open and talk about my faith a little bit. Conservative Cat, you don't like it, it's not your show, right? I love God, and it's a big part of my life, and I've been fasting all day today, and I'm going to fast all the way until tomorrow, I'm thinking. So, that's what I'm going through, so I figured I'd talk about it a little bit.
That's great. I love the show. And, as far as religious people and the conundrum about those that don't like religion, Jesus wants a relationship in the heart. A lot of people kind of tend to forget that. They look at the church or look at churchy people and see a form of religion. But when we really look at how Jesus was hanging on the cross and the relationship of forgiveness of sins, he wants that relationship with each one of us in our own heart.
Exactly. Leon, you're so right. I appreciate you calling in, and that's exactly where I'm going next. That's exactly where I'm going next, Leon. Leon, you have a great rest of your Easter.
You too, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Leon. How powerful. Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope and no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. So when death of Jesus Christ happened, that's when your life begins. And that's why we're so lost as a world. Here's some quick stats for you. I got a book here, and I marked it this morning. It's from Ben Shapiro, actually. Yeah, I'm full of pride. I am. Everybody's always like, no, don't talk about your faith on air. You got to get everybody. And I'm just like, well, it's a big part of my life, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We were talking to Leon. You can call in 309-451-9299. Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope, with no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, that's when my life began. How powerful. Easter is a reminder, at least to Christians, to renew our commitment to be more like Jesus. Too often, the church, it takes this saying, right? Have you ever heard this saying before in your church? Come as you are. They take that to a whole new level where they fear telling those to come as you are, but expect Christ to renew you later, right? They're scared to say, yes, come as you are, but go and sin no more. That's what Jesus did. And Easter is a reminder as Christians to renew our commitment to be more like Jesus. Come as you are, sin no more. We can always repent and change, but this doesn't justify our sins, right? Fellowship is about holding Christians accountable. I was pushed up against a break there, and I didn't even realize. I wasn't even looking at the clock, and then I pushed it. I pushed the button. But I really wanted to read this from Ben Shapiro. It's his book, How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps, and I was just reading it. I got through some of my show prep, and I just got to share this with you. According to a November 2018 Axios poll, 54% of Republicans believe that the Democrat Party is spiteful, while 61% of Democrats believe that the Republican Party is racist, bigoted, or sexist. Approximately 1/5 of both Republicans and Democrats consider the opposing party evil. A Pew Research poll found from 2016 found similar numbers. 70% of Democrats say that Republicans are closed-minded, while 52% of Republicans say Democrats are closed-minded. The same poll said that 58% of Republicans had an unfavorable impression of the Democrat Party leading up to the 2016 election, while 55% of Democrats also felt the same. We should be happy together, and yet increasingly Americans seem to be looking for a non-amicable divorce from each other. And both sides want the silverware and the dog. From the right, the outlook for a united America looks grim. Conservatives perceive a triumphalist, aggressive left hell-bent on rewriting basic American notions, cramming down extreme vision of identity politics, cheering the demographic change they insist will inevitably result in a permanent political and cultural ascendancy. That's a little bit from the Ben Shapiro. You can catch him here on Cities 92.9 weekdays, late nights. But I was reading that after my show prep today, and we need to start holding each other accountable when we start to hate on each other. Now, I'm not saying to justify sin and to, welcome people in open arms and say, yes, continue to sin, because that's not what Jesus did, right? Our job as Christians is to renew our commitment and to be more like Jesus, right? And you have to call them out. Sin. If you were sinning, you have to call them out. And if you are being evil, you have to call them out. Come as you are, but sin no more. And that's what Jesus would have done. We have to start preparing ourselves for societal collapse. Coming up in about 15 minutes, I'll talk about Matt Garvin from Guns and Glory. he has a pretty cool shop. He talks about the First Amendment and he talks about the Second Amendment. So speaking of accountability, we were talking about fellowship and how we should hold each other accountable. We need to start holding Hillary Clinton accountable. So this is some news. The defense's motion to dismiss the case against Hillary Clinton's lawyer, Michael Sussman, has been denied. That means that barring a plea or further postponement, Sussman will go to trial on May 16th. Mark it in your calendar. On the charge of the false statement to the FBI. That must be making the folks in Clinton land sweat with what could be coming next. Now, more information has come out in the latest filings in the case, and if it wasn't obvious already, these filings make it clear that this is going beyond Michael Sussman. It's so much bigger than Michael Sussman. I would even go as far to say it's bigger than Hillary Clinton. This is from the government's response to multiple motions from the defense. Special counsel John Durham asserted in court yesterday that the CIA concluded data from the Clinton campaign lawyer, Michael Sussman, alleging coordination between Trump and Russia was not, quote, not technically plausible and was user created. In the filing, Durham responded to objections from Sussman's defense regarding what evidence could be admissible at the Sussman trial, which is scheduled to begin next month, right? Sussman is accused of lying to the FBI by saying he's not attending a meeting on behalf of a particular client when he was actually presenting the information on behalf of the Hillary Clinton campaign and technology executive with whom he worked. First, we know that the smear that was perpetrated against Trump about a supposed contact with Alpha Bank was made to look like Donald Trump was somehow communicating with the Russians. Was not true. But the information in the most recent filings indicate that the CIA thought it may have been fabricated. This is big. The CIA concluded it was not, quote, technically plausible and that it was user created and not machine/tool generated. You know what else was a lie? The Gretchen Whitmer verdict that dropped and shows some massive flaws with the FBI. All right, to set this up, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in conjunction with the Michigan State Police and their local partners, in October of 2020, revealed arrests from individuals who were attempting to kidnap and or harm the current governor of the state, Gretchen Whitmer. Now, this is some audio I've got to play for you. It's Gretchen Whitmer, and she is completely lost her mind. Now, I don't know how much she knew about the whole hoax, because that's what this is. It's a hoax, and the FBI entrapped some guys. This is Gretchen Whitmer not that long ago, and it really didn't age well.
And the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me. When I put my hand on the Bible and took the oath of office 22 months ago, I knew this job would be hard. But I'll be honest, I never could have imagined anything like this. Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these 2 Michigan militia groups. Stand back and stand by, he told them. Stand back and stand by. Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry.
How perfect, right? How perfect does this have to be? Gretchen Whitmer was not kidnapped, and this was an FBI entrapment, and there was a mistrial declared for all of the people involved. That didn't age well at all. All right, coming up next, we're going to hear from, you know him, you love him. It's Matt Garvin from Guns and Glory. We're going to talk about this societal collapse. Before I go, I'm going to read this text. You can always text in. Call me right now, 309-451-9299. Be a part of the show. Oh, yeah. Express your voice right here on Cities 92.9 because we need it. We need each other. Fellowship and holding each other accountable. Okay, here's the text. Societal collapse is inevitable now. We must prepare. We will never go back to normal, just like Klaus Schwab wants. Yes. And there's even some more actors, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. BlackRock is one of them. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Wow, this is absolutely amazing. I think this is hilarious. Hey, Adam Chandler, he just posted it on Facebook. I thought it was so funny. So you can check Chandler and Swan out on Sunday mornings here on Cities 92.9. So that's tomorrow. Check them out. It's a great show. So this is what Chandler said. The town of Normal wants taxpayers to help with the $50 million expansion of Uptown Normal. How long have the elected officials told us they were going to fix the roads? Maybe they need help seeing the pothole issues. Menards has 11% off, which covers spray paint. Maybe the Easter Bunny should mark all of the holes he's hopping over. Yeah, I know. And the potholes, they're deeper than Pam Reese's pockets, to be honest with you. $200,000, I think, is what she makes at this point, and the potholes it's ridiculous. I mean, I just went out with Jim Fisher and Donald Raines, and we did like a little video, which will be dropping here shortly. But we took a compilation of all the potholes, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Hey, it's Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, 309-451-9299. Call in, be a part of the show. You know, guns, right? Guns and Glory. So, when somebody breaks into your house, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're probably going to pick up the phone and call somebody with a gun. And then you're going to pray that they get there in time. Matt's got you covered over at Guns and Glory. I had an interview with him. I'm going to play it here for you. And in studio with me, I have Matthew from Guns and Glory. He is a guns dealer, right? Is that a correct title?
That'd be correct.
All right. He's a guns dealer, and we're going to be talking all things guns because I actually have no clue on how guns actually really work and how it goes because I've never actually had my own FOID card. I kind of have like this fear of putting my name on a FOID card and like getting into the system of the Illinois State Police, and I've always kind of just put it on the back burner. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your shop because it's kind of unique, Guns and Glory. And I've been in there, and it's really cool. So tell us a little bit about your shop and how you kind of started out in dealing guns.
Guns and Glory is we're a /gun/Christian bookstore. So we've got Bibles and Christian books of sorts. How I started out, 9-ish years ago, it started out like lots of guys when they get their federal firearms license that got it to get me and my buddies some discounts on guns and things, and just did it out of my house. And then one thing led to the other that got a building there in Leroy and some part-time hours at one building small, and then remodeled the building that we're currently in at 117 East Center Street, and kind of made it the gun and bookstore sort of thing. So that's kind of the nutshell of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm dying to talk to you about these ghost guns. It's something that's been in Illinois news for a few weeks now, and I don't really understand how in the world that you can actually make that, and it's legal. It's legal, right, to make your own firearm. And have you ever done that before?
I have not. I mean, honestly, I'm not into the ghost gun thing. I mean, but lots of companies right now, until they'll eventually stop it, but lots of companies you can buy lower receivers that they call them 80%. Basically takes drilling a couple holes and a couple small modifications, and they're a functional receiver that you can build into a gun. And I don't know much about the 3D printer thing, quite honestly, either, but people are doing them out of that. And
but it's a small amount of people.
Very small, and I know that's the government's pushing the ghost gun thing right now. They're just like our government always does. It picks one little thing that not tons of people care about, and if they can get one thing pushed through and made illegal, then okay, we got one. We'll step up, and what's going to be next on the list is the thing. So, to most of my customers and most people, the quote unquote ghost gun thing isn't that big of an issue. But for us believers in God and guns and less government, if you let them take one thing away, what's next? And the facts are, honestly, there are way more good people out there that have these quote unquote ghost guns that will never do anything illegal with them. And they have them kind of like what you started this segment off with, was you kind of don't want to get your FOID card, but put your name out there. There are lots of good people that are, boy, if I get me these 80% guns or whatever, these quote unquote ghost guns, the government won't know I have them when they finally kind of decide to come to our doorstep and try to take them.
Yeah, I actually kind of was going down a rabbit hole trying to see what kind of pieces I could buy, because I was like, okay, my own gun, then do I really need a FOID card? But I do legally in order to possess a firearm. So once it's been ordered to carry it, and I field carry, and which you offer well, right?
Yes, I got a buddy through Guns and Gloria's concealed carry classes, renewals and such. So.
Yeah, and you're so right when you say it's just an inch and they go a mile with it. Right. So these new FOID cards, I really want to ask you about that, because they don't print the expiration date on them anymore. And I want to know, like, does that affect you as a guns dealer? Like, when people come into your shop, try to buy a gun, and I don't know if you sell ammo. Do you sell ammo?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. When they try to purchase ammo, do you have to check their FOID card? And then if it doesn't have the expiration date on it, what do you do?
Well, the new system, as of January 1 of this year, anybody that gets a FOID card this year, it has no expiration or issue date on it. So you have to, whether it's me or Walmart or anywhere, they have to get in the portal and run that FOID number to make sure it's valid before you can even sell them ammunition. The state police get a bad rap. I get people come in the shop daily complaining about the state police. This isn't all the state police's fault. I've got a great contact. She's a great, hopefully I didn't offend you by saying she on your show, but
yeah, you're not a biologist, right?
Right. So, but they have been tasked with just a mess that all comes from Chicago and our great governor and everyone, when they, a couple of years ago, started implementing all this on us gun shops to have more regulations and everything. So from what I see, there's a couple good things on the way they're changing this FOID card thing. Like the new thing, then again, so starting January 20 of 22, no issue or expiration dates. So you have to get into the portal and check it, like I said. Come January of 23, it changes again, and if you have submitted fingerprints for your FOID card or CCL, concealed carry, then all you have to do is buy a gun in a 10-year period. Every time you make a purchase, it automatically extends your FOID card 10 more years. That's one plus, so you never have to buy a FOID card again if you buy one gun in a 10-year period. Because basically what we do when you buy a gun is we run a background check on you. So basically they're having us dealers do their work for them. And if somebody buys a gun, then the FOID card extends 10 more years.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's a long, drawn-out process. Even the application process isn't all that easy, right? So they also make you pay for that's a super anti-2A, right? They make you pay to get your FOID card. It's only $10, but still, it's like, I can't believe that's where we're at. And it's also interesting, and I kind of want to shift gears a little bit, and we have your wife in studio. You guys make a lovely couple, and you have a farm and survival, right? And I know we've been talking a lot about guns, and you look at things like in Shanghai. I don't know if you've been keeping up with that, but there's things in Shanghai, China, the CCP, and you see a bunch of videos coming out of people just living in complete tyranny, right? And I tell people all of the time, and they think I'm absolutely crazy when I say that I buy things like Patriot Supply, my Patriot Supply, and then I also buy things like, things for survival. And then I make sure that I go to the gym every day in order to try to keep myself healthy, because I'm scared of what is going to come down if society starts to literally crumble and where I'm going to end up and be. And I keep telling people, you got to get out of cities. You got to get out of cities. Get somewhere rural. Get some guns. Get your physical, spiritual health up. Grab all of the Christian literature that you can. So is that kind of the direction that your family is taking?
Well, I'm not going to give you every detail, our first talk here, Kat, but I think everybody, I mean, I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer, but our government, lots of them, want total control, and they want you to be dependent on them. And anybody that thinks they get a few $100 a year or a month or whatever from the government to help them out, they think that betters their life. It does not, because all you are is you're a slave to the lender, like the good book says, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to buy votes and buy sheeple, and I just think you're all silly, whether you own property like we do or you live in an apartment, whatever, to not have, I mean, come on.
A game plan. Well, and this is the same people who laugh at me for trying to, build a survival plan. That's basically what I'm trying to do, is build a survival plan. If society decides to crumble at any second, right? And we're biblical people, and I believe in the Bible. I believe in the rapture. I believe in Revelations. And I believe that's what we're seeing play out right now. And people laugh at me, but it's the same people who say that the world is going to end via climate change. And I'm just like, okay, so why would it be a bad thing for me to have a plan? And why would you call me a tinfoil hat wearer if I have a plan? I don't see society having any kind of negative effect when we create a survival plan and buy guns. What's so wrong about that? There's nothing wrong about it, right? That was an interview that I was talking with Matt Garvin from Guns and Glory. He has a shop out there in Leroy. Really interesting place. They've got, on one side, they've got your freedom of religion, and then the other side, they've got the freedom to bear arms, right, in the Constitution. So I've been reading this book after my show prep. It's called How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. It's by Ben Shapiro, and I took some clips out of it. And this really resonated with me after having that interview with Matt this past week. The Declaration of Independence aimed at providing an expression of the American mind, synthesizing sentiments of the day drawn from both contemporaneous writing as well as elementary books of public right as Aristotle's, Cicero, Locke, Sidney. So what exactly is the expression of the American mind? Why does it remain relevant today? The philosophy of the United States, it centers around 3 central principles as articulated in the Declaration of Independence on the reality of our natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that pre-exist government, on the equality of men before law, and the notion that government is instituted only to protect those pre-existing rights and equality of men before law. The philosophy of the Declaration of Independence remains the ideological glue that unifies us. Without the Declaration of Independence and without those 3 central principles, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, civil war is demonstrated. And that is when we have collapse. And the thing with Elon Musk, that is getting to be a pushback to the thing that we need most out of those 3 central principles. That's liberty. The freedom to express yourself. And Twitter gives it an illusion of freedom of speech. The Declaration of Independence says that our rights are self-evident and that all individuals are bestowed those rights by nature and by nature's God. And I opened up the show today on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9 talking about when we start to divide. And that comes when people aren't of faith. When you abandon faith, when you abandon God, that is when you start to see a division. But what are our rights? And how can we know them? Why should human beings have rights? These questions, as we will soon see, are quite open. They stand at the center of our very current political conflicts. Some suggest that our rights come from the government, and that government, therefore, has power to remove such rights. Some suggest that rights are merely utilitarian constructs, that rights are a handy way of thinking about stuff other people shouldn't do to us, but can be overridden if the concerns of many outweigh the concerns of few. The Founding Fathers, however, no. They based their belief in rights in a framework. It's called natural rights. Why? Because rights that spring from human beings aren't rights at all. They're privileges that may be dispensed with at any time. You can just get rid of rights. And are they even rights anymore? I mean, think of the definition of rights. Rights that are emanate from a higher source are indeed unalienable. Unalienable. They cannot be given away, they can't be taken away, and they can't be infringed upon because they come from a source higher than power alone. Right? God is a higher power. And when the government puts out it's false, puts out a fallacy that our rights aren't from God, but actually rather the opposite, that they're from them, that's when our country starts to divide, and that's what we're seeing play out. Ted Cruz, as part of his Verdict podcast, recently held an event at Yale University, appearing alongside Daily Wire's Michael Knowles and a conservative commentator, Liz Wheeler. Ted Cruz fielded a variety of questions from the crowd, and he just blasts this one student. One in particular led to a very heated exchange through Cruz, and it was stoic as always. Even as he was lighting the questioner on fire, a student, or I assume she is one, I don't know, asked him about his questioning of Ketanji Brown Jackson during the confirmation hearing. It wasn't the details she was concerned with, though. She didn't care about the questions. Rather, she accused Trump of asking racist questions and being disrespectful to the now, maybe a woman, I don't know, I'm not a biologist, Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's a Supreme Court justice now. We're pushing up against a break, but after the break, we're going to play this audio of Cruz absolutely shutting down a leftist. Keep it right here. Name at the top of his list. Hey, it's Conservative Cat. Give me a call. 309-451-9299. Now, this heated exchange with Ted Cruz, it was so awesome. He was lighting this questioner on fire. He was talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, and this student, I think, said that he was racist, and asked him why he would ask such racist questions of the Supreme Court justice. Maybe she's a woman, I don't know, I'm not a biologist, Ketanji Brown Jackson, but here's what it sounded like.
On Tuesday, it baffled me that you would ask such flagrantly racist questions to this exceedingly well-qualified candidate. Your colleagues in the GOP promised a respectful and dignified hearing for Justice Jackson, and to me, you did not uphold this.
When it comes to issues of race, I think both the press and the modern left are hypocritical on this question. that they only define someone as black or they only define someone as Hispanic if they agree with them ideologically. Everyone who was harumphing in the media that if you oppose an
Wait a second, wait,
African-American
harumphing?
woman who's a qualified judge, you're a racist. Precisely 0 of them thought it was racist for Democrats, including Joe Biden, to filibuster Janice Rogers Brown. Now, I'm going to suggest to you, if you oppose somebody because of their race, that is the definition of racist. And look, I'll point out in your question, you said that my questioning of Judge Jackson was you used the term racist. Listen, racism is a horrific evil in this country. It is also an insult that the left tosses around casually. I would welcome, if you look at the questions I asked Judge Jackson, every single question I asked her concerned her record. Either her record as a judge, sentencing defendants before her, or her record writing academic materials.
The first thing to always notice when something like this happens, when an exchange happens with a leftist, this takes place it's just so vague, right? She starts out and she says, hey, why were your questions so racist? Does she even know the definition of racism? So it was so vague that Ted Cruz had to come out and give her a definition. This woman says that Cruz's questions were racist, yet she provides no examples at all to show how. As someone who followed the Judge Jackson hearings, I've had a pretty good handle on what had happened. Basically, she denied saying that she was a woman, right, Judge Jackson. Also, Senator Josh Hawley, he came out and gave examples of how she was not a credible nominee. She wasn't even credible. So this leftist that started to have this exchange with Cruz, she didn't even know what she's talking about, especially when it comes to the definition of racism. Hey, we're pushing up against a break here, but coming up, we're going to be talking with Matt from Guns and Glory. I had an interview with him, and I want to play that second part of the interview that I had with him on survival. We talked specifically about survival and the societal collapse. Come back after the break. Easter is a reminder to Christians to renew our commitment and be more like Jesus. Too often I see a church taking in somebody and saying, come as you are, but they take it to a level where they fear telling people, hey, come as you are, but sin no more. We can always repent and we can change, but this does not mean that there's justification to sin. Fellowship is all about holding other Christians accountable, and it's important to have fellowship, especially when we're faced with societal collapse. I spoke with Matt from Guns and Glory, Matt Garvin, and he's got a shop up in Leroy, but this is part 2 of that interview. And he talks a lot about survival and about the things you need in order to prepare for something like a societal collapse that we know is going to happen according to Revelations if you're a believer.
And I'm not meaning that badly, but obviously your first step, if you paid attention 2 years ago, is to have plenty of toilet paper. Because that's the most important thing.
And Germ-X, but like hand sanitizer. People going
plenty.
Crazy about the hand sanitizer and toilet paper.
Same people that don't have enough canned goods to last 4 days in their house. Mm-hmm. So we got silly what we think are important things. A lot of people think. So I don't know. Just we can talk for days on the preparing portion of it, but I've got the. Whether it's good on the radio or not, I've got the 5 B's that I try to live by, mm-hmm. and that I think are important. Mm-hmm. And that's Bibles, bullets, beans, booze, and boobs. And I'm not meaning that
Yes,
badly, but
it's
those
true.
are all, I mean, that's the last one I said is the oldest profession since the beginning of time. And I don't mean
Well,
it
and
badly,
there's an
but those are
attack on the
all-
nuclear family, right? And they don't want you to have a family. They don't want you to reproduce like humans are supposed to do and create a solid society, a solid family unit. That's not what they're about. Because when you have a solid family unit, then you have people around you who are willing to back you up when when they start to hit sideways, right? And then you have more people reading and more literature, and that I'm big on books. Like I'm trying to like hoard all of my books that I have. I know I'm crazy now. People always say I'm crazy, but I hoard all of my books that I have, and I have like this fear of like them coming in, taking out all of the books, taking out everything, because that's what they're doing in Shanghai, China. And there's also this thing, I actually got this on my text messages today. Somebody had texted me and they were like, so why do you think that all of these videos are coming out via the CCP and all of these draconian type things, like people screaming, people like completely living in chaos? Why do you think they're letting us see that? And I'm like, well, it's conditioning. Right, through media, through mainstream media. And although we look at it now and we're saying, oh, well, this is bad. Obviously, it's not good that people are jumping from buildings and people are living in this draconian type life. But there's movies out there about kind of like this societal collapse. There's movies out there that condition you and you don't even realize it's conditioning you to think that this is okay. It's just inches by inches of them conditioning you with media of like, hey, we might do this someday, because there's been all kinds of pandemic movies and things like that, and that kind of conditioned us to kind of nobody really knew what was happening during COVID-19, but we kind of had a little bit of an idea because of all of the film of pandemic.
Well, we're honestly, we are a very lucky society to live in this country. We can sit here and gripe about our government and state police and everything all day long. I mean, for days, but we still have the best country there is. And we're fortunate. And this is one of my big issues, that we are so fortunate that we're able to look at these other countries. I guess number one, we've got the Bible. We know how the story ends, but we look at these other countries and what's going on. I mean, the leaders in these other countries, if you think our leaders have control, these other countries, they have total control. So why we wouldn't be smart, and instead of keep giving our leaders more power,
we just start taking the power ourselves. Yes, that's Matt. I'm talking with him from Guns and Glory. He's a guns dealer, and we were talking a lot about, ghost guns, how it's not really quite a problem, but they're making it a problem, and they're inching their way into your right as an arms-bearing citizen. And they do that via legislation all of the time. They're just like, oh, well, we'll do a little gun policy here. We'll address crime here. We'll try to combat gun violence here. Even at the local level, there was something in the local ordinances in Normal where they added a provision that banned, like those pop firework things, anything that explodes, or like those, what are they called? The fake guns that, you use if you're out in the middle of like the ocean. Gosh, I can't.
flare guns.
Flare guns. That's it. They banned those. You can't use those in the town of Normal. And I thought it was kind of bizarre. The language in it said any kind of like explosives, like at all. So I was like, okay, so what if I had a flare gun in my car? Because I do. And nobody wanted to answer that question. And I'm just like, okay, so what's next is always the thing that I've got on my head, or in my head. I'm like, what's next? What are they going to come after next?
The punishment needs to go. I'm fine for stiffer punishments for bad crimes, but they don't put Ford in jail because a guy gets a DUI driving a Ford pickup. So it always comes down to guns are bad. No, bad guys are bad. And bad guys are always going to be bad, whether there's not a gun in this country or not. They will find another way to be bad. I mean, we just, from the beginning of times, there's been good and bad people.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there's always going to be until the world stops turning.
And it's like this, and then this is why I'm going to go to Guns and Glory, because when somebody comes into your house and when bad people come after good people, what's the first thing you do? You're going to pick up the phone and call somebody who actually has a gun, right? You're going to call the police. They're armed and they can help you, right?
But it's typically,
that's the first thing you do.
And most of your police will tell you it's too late by then.
Yeah. So you're going to pick up the phone, and then it's going to be too late by then, first of all. And then when you, after you're done with the phone call, if you get there, you're going to say a quick prayer. God, please don't let me die. That's why the Second Amendment is so important, because put yourself in that situation where somebody breaks into your home, or put yourself in a situation where you're in a car and bad people, and we see it all of the time, come after good people. They can just sense something about you. And I'm telling you, it's not good people going out there and gunning down people. So why are you robbing people of legally getting firearms when they're good people? And they need the gun in order to protect themselves. I say it all the time, these bad people, they're going to find a way to get their gun. Banning them, putting all kinds of weird legislation in there and trying to slip it in and take things away from us, like flare guns. Like, that's bizarre.
Well, the main way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And we all hope, I mean, I don't want to have to ever use my gun against somebody. Mm-hmm. Would I? Yes. But whether you ever, most people, it's like having fire insurance on your house. Mm-hmm. You don't ever plan on your house burning down. And most people's house don't burn down. That's a small percentage but you have fire insurance. So peace of mind is big for all of us, in whatever that is, whether it's, oh, I need to see this much money in my bank account, or I need this much food in the pantry. Having a gun, I mean,
having a Bible.
Right, the two most powerful tools.
No pun intended, but if I've got a peace and I've got my peace of mind with my Bible, then I'm all right. Then I'm set.
Even if you don't ever have to use the gun. I mean, it just, it makes you feel protected. Mm-hmm. And we've sold lots of guns to ladies, elderly people, because they all, and lots of them. I mean, one of the main statements, if I recorded them, never had a gun before, but with everything that's going on in this world, in this country, thought it's about time we should have something at the house. Mm. So there's a lot of people out there that are a little bit worried. And finally, the light bulb's coming on at older ages, or single ladies, or whatever, that, maybe we should have this gun, not to go do harm with it, but to protect ourselves from harm.
Yes, to protect ourselves from harm. And we're pushing up against a break here, but come back. We're going to talk about the crucifixion and how Jesus was a good guy. And there were a lot of bad people after him. Ties into Matt. Come back after the break. So yesterday was Good Friday, and I've always had a really hard time wrapping my head around why we call it Good Friday. So on Good Friday, over 2,000 years ago, our Lord and Savior was beaten, mocked, betrayed, and ultimately he was crucified. And yet we call it a good day. The reason why we call it good is because 3 days later, Jesus defeated death, hell, and sin. Hey, it's Conservative Cat City's 92.9. Call in, be a part of the show, 309-451-9299. You can also text that number. Got a text rolling in here. City and county have ordinances that are way unconstitutional. We need to band together or all our freedoms will be gone. Who passes ordinances? Yes, that's right. So who passes the ordinances? So that ordinance that I was talking about with Matt was the Normaltown ordinance. And that Normaltown ordinance is basically, it's the city council, right? The Normaltown council and the city manager who come up with those ordinances. If you sift through all of the Normaltown ordinances, you'll realize what a joke they actually are. If you actually sat down and read through those ordinances, they even have this thing where you're supposed to sign when you become a council member, and there's clauses in there where you sign to the Illinois Constitution, the Illinois Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and then you also sign to protect the normal ordinances. So you uphold all three of those. But the ordinances that our council members signed in the town of Normal don't include the normal ordinances, I believe. They don't even swear by the normal ordinances like they're supposed to. So there's something in the normal town ordinances that says that they're supposed to swear by all three of those. They only swear by two. All right, we're talking Good Friday. We're talking Easter Sunday is tomorrow. Let me know how you plan to spend your Easter. 309-451-9299. Jesus paid in full. And there's a plethora of reasons why he did it, right? For our rebellion, and obvious one is sin. But Jesus died for our rebellion and our transgressions. He took on all of it, not just some. Today I came across somebody and they asked me, hey, what are you doing for Easter? And I asked her, hey, what are you doing for Easter? She looked back at me and she said, I'm not religious and my kids are grown. And instead of turning away, I did press her a little bit. I asked her, why aren't you religious? And what do you mean by I'm not all that religious? She said that she's got a lot of friends who are homosexuals, and she thinks that the church is not accepting of those people or of her. And she said, I think the church is hypocritical. Godless people constantly think. Her language was, I think, and, well, my friends. Notice the semantics there. She's unsure. And the death of Christ gives us that grounding that we need. And that grounding keeps us from dividing from one another. So here's the Bible story of the crucifixion here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. So the crucifixion of Jesus, it was recorded in the New Testament, and it's known as the Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Bible story is the central summary of the saving gospel of Jesus. It was the biggest political event of all time. The death of Jesus was the biggest political event of all time. So if you want to harp on me, lefties, you can do it all you want in the text line, but I'm talking about Jesus here. Jesus had prophesied his death in Matthew. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of these elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day and be raised to life. Jesus understood that his life would be required as a sacrifice for the sins of man. Crowds gathered to mourn and watch Jesus' death. He was nailed on the cross between two criminals, and his sides were pierced with a sword. While Jesus was mocked, one of the criminals asked Jesus to remember him, and Jesus responded, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Jesus then looked to heaven and asked God, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they do." When taking his last breath, Jesus spoke, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished." A really compelling story. And when we're alone, we tend to have sorrow, right? And our sin and our sorrow was taken all away in the crucifixion of Christ. Lost without hope, with no place to begin, your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, that's when my life began. Now, I was reading to you a little bit out of this book, Ben Shapiro. That's where I'm dedicating some of my studies this past week, right? And he talks a lot about the divisiveness. So here's just a couple of polls that happened in 2018. So the Axios poll was 54% of Republicans believe that the Democrat Party is spiteful, while 61% of Democrats believe the Republican Party is racist, bigoted, and sexist. Approximately 1/5 of Republicans and Democrats consider the opposing party evil. Now, we can't come together if we don't have Christ and if we don't have faith, because that's what grounds us. That's what gives us this supernatural peace. And we have to keep each other accountable. All right. Speaking of accountability, I think that this story went under the radar of the lefties, right? And under the lamestream news. There's something incredibly sad about a politician who is otherwise irrelevant, at least to the American public, but just can't let go. That's Hillary Clinton. And she's a 74-year-old grandmother who lost a past presidential election, and not during the last election cycle, but 5 years ago. The bigger picture here with this whole Hillary Clinton and her insurrectionists and the rules of the Durham report, the bigger picture is that we were always right? And Hillary Clinton was totally wrong. When we last left the saga of the Durham probe, the defense had a motion to dismiss the case entirely against Clinton's Michael Sussman, and it was totally denied. That means that barring a plea of further postponement, Sussman, he's going to be going to trial in May on the charge of the false statement to the FBI. Now, something bigger has come out. The CIA, we knew that everything that they perpetuated out against Donald Trump about him being in contact with Alpha Bank, that was totally made up, fabricated, and somehow they made it look like Donald Trump was somehow communicating with Russians, and that just wasn't true. But the information in these most recent filings, it indicates that the CIA had thought it may be fabricated, and the CIA concluded that it was not technically plausible and was user created and not generated by a machine or tool. Durham doesn't go that far, but in another filing, in opposition to an effort by the defense to exclude an expert witness from the government, Durham says he will present an agent expert, and this is huge. He's going to present an agent expert to show that the tech people behind the claim about Alpha Bank could not be reasonably believed. The conclusion about the data that they were claiming, and they passed on to the FBI. So he's going to provide pretty much a witness in this next filing. How do we know that this is probably going to encompass more people? Durham discusses grants of immunity for different types of people. So Durham, in this report, he gave immunity to this researcher number 2. And they're, in this report, a lot of people are referred to by researchers or by, witnesses and all of that. But they're going to give immunity to this researcher number 2 to explain what had been done with the data. And then he raised concerns to that defendant about whether that data was being unlawfully collected or used. So this researcher could have been getting that data unlawfully, and he's going to get immunity. So this is going to be something that you're going to want to keep up on. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about, Elon Musk and Twitter. So the Twitter board announced that they're going to adopt a poison pill defense. And I'll tell you what that means right here on Conservative Cat. Yeah, it doesn't stop. The Trump train does not stop. The Twitter board announced that they're going to adopt this poison pill defense. And they're moving to try to prevent Elon from acquiring more than 15% of the company. It's designed to make acquisition less attractive. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Be a part of the show. Call in. You can text in anytime, 309-451-9299. So this is going to be a big story rolling out the next 3 days here, I'd imagine. That's how long it's going to take to see what this plan B is that Musk alluded to. Now, the problem with this move is that it's denying the shareholders the gain they would have made from the sale. And it's detrimental to their interests. So I don't know why they're doing it. Musk was offering to buy for a share price much higher than what the shares were currently priced at. So the board could be opening themselves up to a bunch of lawsuits for failure to uphold those fiduciary responsibilities to the shareholders by not taking the deal, right? They're opening up this plethora of lawsuits that could come down. Whether they actually come down, I don't know if they're a bunch of leftists and they're in on it or what. But if you recall, Musk had said that he had a plan B. Now, I knew that this was going to happen, but I think these lawsuits are also going to happen. If the Twitter board decided they didn't want to make the sale, he said that he was going to issue a plan B. So I think that this plan B is actually that whole lineup of lawsuits about failing to uphold the fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. It looks like Musk is not backing down in the face of this poison pill, or in the face of this coincidental story that the SEC and the DOJ might be looking into him, like they always do. They always sick the DOJ out on people. Why do they do that? The DOJ, they sick the DOJ out on those Alabama legislators for saying no to the puberty blocker. They sick the DOJ out on you, the parent who is showing up to school board meetings. And they constantly use the DOJ to come after free speech all of the time. And now they're using it to go after Musk. A story seemingly meant to frighten him off, right? But I think it just kind of equipped Elon to want to peeve him off even more. It sounds like he may be going all in. Sources close to the matter told New York Post that Elon is speaking to investors to come in with him to buy Twitter outright. The sources say that this new plan with those partners will be forthcoming. I don't know how much that's true. I don't know if it's not necessarily like an outright buy. I do think that these lawsuits are going to happen, and they're going to be faced with, okay, what's best for our shareholders? I don't think I don't know if it would be great for Twitter, for Elon to buy Twitter. And maybe that is how they counter the lawsuits that happen. Because Elon Musk, right, he's going to push out free speech. Now, I don't know if the lefties are going to stay on the platform if there's free speech. And it's argued, like he's not doing this for money, right? He's doing it for free speech. But I don't know. We'll see. Sources say that new plan with those partners is going to be forthcoming. One of those possible partners, their name is Silver Lake Partners. It's a private equity firm. And Musk's spokesperson said that he couldn't confirm it, but they likely wouldn't until they had it all worked out and everything was in place, ready to go. So this poison pill might limit Musk if he went in with the partners. And that could potentially circumvent it. But the pill may not stop other entities or people from acquiring their own shares up to 15%. So now it's up to the lefties to try to play the game that Elon Musk was trying to do when he bought the 9% shares. So now the lefties are going to try to eat up the company by buying shares up to 15%. Those owners could partner with Musk to force a sale, though, and make changes in the executive ranks, or push for other overhauls of the company. Twitter hasn't yet filed its shareholders' rights plan with the SEC, though it announced the poison pill in a statement. The SEC filing will give more details on whether it prevents like-minded investors from teaming up to buy a greater percent of the stake. So Elon Musk could kind of counter and create just a buying out of the shares if he partners with people like this Silver Lake Partners. So they're limiting them with this poison pill by saying, no, you can't have that 15%. Another element in the saga is this private equity firm. It's called Thoma. So Thoma Bravo it's a private equity firm, and it had more than $103 billion in assets under management as of the end of December, and has informed Twitter it's exploring the possibility of putting together a bid. So that's big. According to Reuters, it is not clear how much Thoma Bravo would be prepared to offer, and there's no certainty that such rival bid will materialize, the sources caution, asking not to be identified because of the matter being confidential. So they're playing their cards very, very close to their chest. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this story in a couple of days. I personally think that it's going to be more so the lawsuit route, where a lot of lawsuits from investors come out and Twitter is faced with, well, we should probably give it to Elon. Landlords, you guys, I'm so sorry. If you're a landlord out there, I'm so sorry. I don't know why Illinois is doing this. Oh, wait, I do know why. Illinois is a communist state. Landlords around Illinois have concerns about an amendment to Homeless Prevention Act. And that passed both chambers, and it's on the governor's desk. Do it now, HB 2775. Call up the governor and say, no, just Jelly Bean, stop. Stop with what you're doing. Because basically what this does, it says that you have to succumb to Section 8 housing. Now, this is a little interview that I had with Paul Arena, and he is a legislative affairs director at the Illinois Rental Property Association. And he said that if this is signed into law, landlords statewide, they're going to lose control over their own leases by being pressured to join a Section 8 housing program. This bill is disgusting, and it's wrong, and it's evil. And let me know why you think Illinois wants us in Section 8 housing, and why Illinois wants to dictate what landlords do when it comes to their rental properties. We're going to get into this. So this measure basically amends the Homeless Prevention Act, and it gives protections against discrimination based on a source of income. That's how they're pushing this. I don't know how exactly that's true, but it basically says that landlords, you have to participate in Section 8 housing. Is that correct?
Right. So they titled the bill Homelessness Prevention, but maybe when it first came forward in the legislature, they talked a little bit about homelessness. That's just spin that they put on the bill so people could say, yeah, I voted to prevent homelessness. It has nothing to do with that. What, in the end, they did was include source of income as a protected class within the Illinois Human Rights Act. And the bill just says that those words, just source of income is protected, without any definitions. So these laws already exist in the city of Chicago, and the way it's enforced there is Section 8 housing is considered a source of income.
Oh.
The problem with that is Section 8 housing is a contract that you enter in with the government. So it's not just somebody giving you money, it's somebody forcing you into a contractual agreement.
A contractual agreement. That this is awful for landlords. And as your role, you're the director of legislative affairs at the Illinois Rental Property Association. As in your role there, do landlords come to you and ask you, like, hey, how do I participate in this Section 8 housing that the government is essentially saying I have to participate in?
Right. There's always, I've been involved with these organizations for almost my entire career. I've been doing this for 31 years. And there's always concerns by landlords of how do you actually participate in this program for those who are making a choice to do it. Even for them, it's confusing. Now what they're doing is mandating and say everyone has to do it. And, the contract is pages and pages long. There's all sorts of requirements in it. It requires that you give the government open and free access to your business records, your office, computers where your records are located. It interferes with the sale of property where a new buyer has to also agree to the contract in order for you to sell the property. I guess you're agreeing by contract to do that prior to selling. So it's not a small thing. They're asking a lot of people, and if you were choosing to do it voluntarily, that's one thing, but to mandate it is something entirely different.
Yeah, and I don't see why they're mandating it. Do you have any, to me, and I know, Paul, this is going to come off very tinfoil hatty, but to me, it's almost like they don't want people in homes that are of a high standard. We know that Section 8 housing in Chicago and all of the subsidies that people are living on in those areas, the housing is not great. And it's because landlords aren't getting the money to upkeep that type of housing, right? Because you have to how much is rent? So how much is rent going to be? So say here in Bloomington Normal, if a landlord is participating and now has to follow this bill. And if it's signed into law by Governor J.B. Pritzker, I don't think he's signed it into law yet. You can still call his office and ask for it not to be signed. I believe it's 40. What bill is it?
House Bill 2775.
2775. You can still call Governor J.B. Pritzker and ask him not to sign it because this is forcing landlords to set a specific rent. So in Illinois, what would that rent be set at?
So the federal government sets standards for the rental amounts, and it's done by areas of the state. And so Section 8 will only pay to those limits based on what they determine your market rate is. However, in some areas, the housing authorities have discretion to pay higher rents to get tenants into more desirable locations. And that's discretionary based on the region. So if somebody's rents are higher than Section 8, they're not going to necessarily force you to lower your rent to serve the tenant, but they may decide to pay more for that tenant. Now, once the tenant's in there, the contract that you're forced to sign does say that they can adjust the rent at any time, which I don't, in a practical application, I'm not sure how that would work, but it's another aspect of the contract that causes people to hesitate to participate. Also, the reason why Section 8 tenants often end up in housing that's less desirable is because the mandates of the program discourage people from participating. So housing that's attractive to the broad market usually gets snapped up, and housing that's less attractive ends up being offered as Section 8 housing. If they fixed and improved the program, they could fix that problem.
Paul, we're pushing up against a break here, but I mean, what can we do, and why? Why do you think Illinois decided to, our legislators, why do you think they pushed out this bill?
Well, years ago, the government decided that it was too difficult to be a landlord, partly because of the rules that the government imposes on the business. And so they're demolishing publicly owned housing, and they're looking to the private sector to fill that void. And when the private sector didn't, fully do that, now they're going to force you to do it.
Oh, Paul, it gives me goosebumps. I'm going to be praying for you, and I hope that you have a good Easter weekend. But yeah, what can we do at this point? Just call the governor because it's on his desk.
Yeah, call the governor. Ask him to veto the bill. We asked for just a statement put in the bill that said you're not going to force people to sign the contracts. And so source of income protects other sources of income too, like alimony, child support, people who get paid cash. So there could be benefit from the bill if they took this contractual obligation out.
Yeah, if they gave you a choice. Paul, we're pushing up against a break. Yeah, that was Paul Arena, and he was a director of the Illinois Property Association, and he's being faced, and many landlords across the state of Illinois are being faced with having to succumb to Section 8 housing. Why? Because it's the Great Reset. Section 8 housing and getting you in Section 8 housing creates a place in a dystopian type world where the government gets to say, hey, we want you to have this much food. We want you to live in this place. We want you to go to work here. This is all part of their plan. Speaking about plans, the plot executed by these so-called white supremacists, Gretchen Whitmer, yeah, that wasn't true. Why is this such a big deal? Because this was a plot executed by the FBI where they were so startled with Trump winning Michigan in 2016. They wanted to sway voters by pushing out this narrative that all MAGA voters were terrorists. Full disclosure, I thought there were some truths to these goons chatting online, and they were talking about kidnapping Whitmer. But boy, oh boy, was I wrong about the direction these goons went and just how far they came to actually kidnapping her. Because they didn't, right? There was a mistrial. This was a plot to undercut the sitting president. The FBI, it's an organization with ample means and little oversight. These are some big questions you've got to start asking, and it needs to be more out there. How much did Bill Barr know? How out of control is the FBI? Did Governor Gretchen Whitmer know that she was a part of this plot? Is there anybody holding the FBI accountable? There's no political overhead, and this is the current executive branch going to do. Is this current executive branch going to do anything now that we know what we know about the FBI executing a plot and using these these people? They did it all at the expense of these 6 stoner guys who were just and they're being acquitted, right? And there was a mistrial this past week. The FBI vilified a voter group in order to win an election. Make no mistake, that's what happened. And in order to get people to not vote for Republicans on the ballot, because by association, right, you'd be no better than an Adam Fox who tried to kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer. They deemed an entire voter group as terrorists. And it gets even crazier. Listen to this. You know how they essentially gave these heroin addicts, this is what they essentially did. They gave heroin addicts needles and they said, shoot up. That's the best way I can describe it. The field director, this guy who was in charge of the whole plot, this little sting, he has been promoted to serving as a key player in investigating January 6th. Ray Epps, anyone? He was a Fed. Bigger picture here. It wasn't just Trump on that ballot. What really peeved me off about this election fraud stuff were those Senate seats. Hey, coming up, we're going to wrap this show up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and why it's so important. Thanks so much for joining me on an Easter special. We'll be right back. At the top of his list, the Statue of Liberty. Oh, hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Be sure to weigh in on the show. We're coming up to the end here. 309-451-9299. Happy Easter to you. You know, there's nobody better than Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, and I'll say it here. Easter, it's a hard one for us Christians out there. We want people to know Jesus because when you know Jesus, you know peace. And when you don't have Jesus, you don't have peace. We've got to love each other. And whether you're celebrating Easter at church or getting together with family and friends, my prayer is that you are reminded of just how much you're loved. Jesus even loved the atheists too. When you don't have that reminder, that is when we start to divide as a nation. When you've abandoned faith and morality and goodness, then you've decided, you know what? I'm better off being separate from those who are in tune with peace. We're walking free because of the crucifixion. Now, I'm going to share a couple of Bible verses. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 21. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man. Societal collapse is coming, and it's sad. And the best part of Jesus Christ dying on the cross is that we can have this supernatural peace that comes with being of faith. I want to share something from an excerpt I was reading. It's a story here about the book of Steve, and it was about these meditations of the Blessed Catherine Emmerich. And I'm not Catholic, but I came across this in the Reverend, and I thought I'd share it. When the angels that were escorting Jesus had knocked down the infernal walls, a storm rose up of curses, insults, shrieks, and laments. Several angels elsewhere chased endless swarms of demons, those who would have then had to recognize and adore the Redeemer. Chase out the demons. Don't let them get to you. Just love, right? Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. I hope you have a fantastic Easter. Thanks for joining me on Conservative Cat. I really do appreciate it. Feel free to text me. I've got my phone on me, 309-451-9299. I appreciate you, and God bless you and your family.